On this episode of the Camp Owners Podcast, our guest is Mario Del Cueto, who is with Mountain Camp Marin, and he is talking with us about some great strategies that he has learned from his time in the corporate world and how he infuses them into camp. There are some fabulous takeaways, everything from ways to communicate as a team, ways to look at your interviews and how you can gain more data from them, and then use that post camp about some of your performers and what success looked like with those new staff. Also, things about solving problems, some characteristics of getting feedback from parents and campers and staff. All just really, really great things leading into summer that we think you can use right away. We hope you enjoy it. Have a listen. Let us know what you think.
This is the Camp Owners Podcast from Go Camp Pro, exploring best practices and issues that professionals in the private camp industry face every day. You can find our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod.
Celebrating 30 years, Camp Marin camp management software not only provides a great tool and caring support for your best ever workdays, but a delightful registration experience for parents. Discover what more than 1,800 camps know and how you can love your software too. Visit campbrain.com/ownerspod.
Activity schedules are the backbone of every camper's experience. If there's a staffing change, it's really hard to find a person that knows your camp and the nuance your schedule takes. Come check out Camptivities to learn more about our scheduling tools designed for camps by camp people. Find out more at camptivities.com.
Welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast, a space for camp owners to talk about the unique aspects of camp ownership and get inspired by each other. We are going to sit down with camp industry experts, leaders, and fellow camp owners to hear how the camp dream transpired for them, learn from each other, and discuss some of the biggest issues in the private camp industry. Hi, everybody. I'm Howie Grossinger, and I'm the co-owner of Camp Robin Hood and Camp Walden, day and overnight camps in Ontario, Canada.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Schuna. I am the co-owner and executive director of Hidden Pines Ranch Day Camp located in Stillwater, Minnesota. If you are looking to find and subscribe to the Camp Owners Podcast, you can either find us online at gocamp.pro/ownerspod or by searching for us in your favorite podcast app. Finally, if you're listening to this and think it would be useful to other camp owners or aspiring camp owners in your circle, please feel free to send them a note to listen. Oh, and Howie,
Yes.
You are so good at this. I was supposed to do this. But we always like to thank our sponsors. So Camp Brain and Camptivities, we are incredibly grateful that you sponsor this podcast. We love seeing you both since it is kind of conference season, not kind of, it is. We'd love to see your support of the different variety of conferences and of our work here on the podcast. Hello, Howie.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm great, Kelly. Great to see you. We're in the thick of flooding our brains with great information and making us and challenging us to rethink our preparations and or reaffirming the routes that we're taking, or the routes, depending on what side of the border you're from, that we're taking in our training and preparations for the summer. So I hope everyone is enjoying camp conference season, wherever that might take you. It's great to be together. I'm so excited for this conversation, Kelly, and I look forward to you kicking us off.
Me too. We have a young camp pro on the show, Howie, really bringing down the age on this podcast today, which is good, which is so good for us. So today, our guest is Mario Del Cueto. He is the camp director at Mountain Camp Marin. I hope I said that right, Mario. And also, Howie, did you know that he is the recent Jack Weiner Leadership Award winner for ACA? I bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that. Mario, congratulations.
I know. He was up on the stage and his fiance was there videoing him so proudly in the mountain camp staff. It was awesome. It was great. So he just got that honor. So I want to make sure that we brought that up because that is well deserved. But I think that also plays into why we wanted Mario to be on the show and how we hopefully I can speak for us. But Mario has been someone over the past couple of years that I've met at conferences, but just like go-getter and really wanting to number one, be a professional in the camp world, leave his business world, which people probably think he's crazy in some points. But Mario to me is this great mix of bringing some of his experience and learning from the corporate world to the camp world. And how do those worlds collide and work together and have synergy? and also make us better as a profession. So he's super driven. He's super excited. He's a learner, like a sponge at conferences. So I love it. He's such a good active listener too. He's always writing down things and smiling, which is so good. But what we're hoping to have him talk about today is just some of those lessons from the corporate world, what he's learned and how it translates to camp, and then also sharing some great tips from some leadership books. Howie and I love books about leadership and learning. So he's basically giving us some cliff notes to help us since it is getting fired up camp time. So Mario, welcome. And will you just share with our listeners like a little brief origin story about how you came to be in the camp world?
Absolutely. Kelly and Howie, thank you so much for having me on. And thanks for the kind words. It really was such an honor to win the Jack Weiner Leadership Award. And I can't wait to chat with you both and all the listeners about bringing corporate best practices into the camp world, both from my experience in the business world, as well as some of these great business books that we will dive into in a second. My camp origin story, I'm from Los Angeles originally. Both of my parents were public school teachers in LA Unified. And so kind of from this very early age, there was this emphasis on education and the importance of youth development. And they knew that extended beyond the classroom. So I was always signed up for after school program this or youth sports that, or perhaps most importantly, summer camps. And so whether that was going to Tom Sawyer camp or going to Catalina Island camp for sleepaway experiences or different basketball camp this or math camp that, I was doing a portfolio of experiences every summer and really enjoyed being on the other side of those in college and in high school, being the summer camp counselor or the youth basketball coach, the big brother from Big Brothers and Sisters. And I really drew a lot of enjoyment from being part of those youth development programs. I put that type of passion on the side for a bit, where I went into the business world. I spent 6 years at Bain & Company, being a management consultant, helping, Fortune 500 companies answer some of their largest questions. Should we enter this new market? Our costs are increasing. How do we bring those down? Those meaty questions from the C-suite. And within that 6 years, I went on educational leave and pursued a business degree and also got a Master of Arts in Education at Stanford. And it was at that time when I was kind of questioning, how can I reorient my career into things I really care deeply about? And I came up with this triangle of, on one side of the triangle, sports and games, on another side of the triangle, youth development, working for or with kids. And then the last part of the triangle, business, doing it in a for-profit manner, using my skills from business school, from the corporate world, whatever have you. And I tested a bunch of things in that triangle, working in youth football for the National Football League, working in a couple of different ed tech startups. But the idea that I was the most excited about was camp ownership, camp leadership. And so I began developing content that I would present at conferences or in my blogs to bring some of the learnings from the corporate sphere to camping as a way to stay close to this industry that I cared so much about. And then about a year and a half ago, I made the jump away from the corporate sphere and am now excitedly a full-time camp professional. I'm the director of Mountain Camp Marin, a day camp in Marin County, and I am super stoked today to talk to you about some of the insights from the presentations.
Mario, your enthusiasm for the industry is so refreshing and so gets me so excited, because we have a generation of camp operators that float in around sort of our age, my age. I'm older than Kelly, so I don't want to age her by any stretch. But your enthusiasm for the industry has been something I've been really impressed with. So the opportunity to have you share some of the things that I've heard you speak about is going to be great. So we are ready to jump into this. Are you ready, Mario?
I am ready. A quick call out for all the listeners. I am 30 years old, so I'm not that young, but I am excited to bring some energy to this conversation.
Yeah, fair enough. But I do think that clearly one of the things that's been really impressive is the path you've taken and the achievement you've seen in your young life has allowed you to focus in on camp. And I really hope it becomes inspirational to people listening that you can pivot, using that famous word, and you can use skills you've learned in other areas and enhance what we all are so passionate about. And I hope I know there's going to be some really great takeaways from this. So once again, welcome. The corporate world, for those of us in camp, for those of us who don't have a business background and we don't have a business administration degree at a big fancy school or otherwise, a lot of us have gone into the business of camp being teachers or having other avenues where we perhaps are a legacy in a well-established family generational camp, and we've pursued teaching, and we now need to pivot. And while we may get into some of the business concepts of that we can take away from the corporate world, there are a lot of approaches that the corporate world has taken. Maybe we can just start very early in this discussion on some of the things that the corporate world does well or has caught your eye that have transferability to the things that we do that we may not, as camp professionals, label as a corporate approach, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is something called an SOP, which is a standard operating procedure, which is fancy speak for saying we have decided how we're going to do things here and we're going to follow that formula. It's establishing systems and following them through. And so a way that that shows up in the corporate world is by having a structured interview where you know what core competencies you're looking for in a client, or I'm sorry, an applicant, what questions you're going to ask of each applicant, how many rounds of interviews, how long each interview should go, what are the touch points leading up to the interview that gives the applicant sufficient information about the role. This is all intentional and thought through, and every company does it a little bit differently. There's not a right way to do it. But the corporate world, as I think about hiring, has a very intentional and structured approach. And that is a bread and butter thing that many camps do, but not all camps do. And an example of a great standard operating procedure. And so your SOPs can be around hiring. It can be around how you run payroll. You're going to do it the same way each time, or how you lead your orientations, right? You're going to have someone do the introduction section. You're going to have another member of your seasonal leadership team do the central meaty parts of it. And then a third member does the reflection for each of your sessions. Whatever that SOP is for your camp, that is one of like the greatest lessons I've been able to take from the corporate world. Hopefully that was responsive a bit, Howie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what's so interesting in so many of these types of conversations, Mario, is that you've applied a corporate label to something that a lot of us already do without
Totally.
knowing that we're doing this. And I think for us listening, I hope it's reassuring to know that a lot of us do have these types of systems in a lot of our aspects of our operations, and in labeling it the way you did, given the world that you've become familiar with as well, it probably hopefully lights a bit of a light bulb in everyone's head that we can apply that intentionality to even more aspects of what we deliver, both from behind the drape kind of thing in sort of behind the scenes, but also even just up front and front facing items. Kelly, did some of Mario's examples resonate with you? I know they did with me.
Yeah, what I like about it is, well, one, now we'll just go up to people at conferences like, so what's your SOP on interviewing staff?
I love that, Kelly.
No, but what I like is it reminds me of the day camp call that we just had with Wake a couple weeks ago, was talking just about interviewing and what are people's procedures, and they all can be very different. Like, Howie, I know you do group interviews. You have hundreds of people to hire. We do a screening, then an interview guide in between, and then our interviews. So it's really good, I think, to have your SOP, but then also talk to other camps about how they're doing theirs and what really works well for them. And so that's one of my favorite things. But I do, like you said, Howie, how it's a really fancy term, a business term, which we love. So we like to sound businessy, but a lot of people are already doing it. But if you're not, I think that's a big takeaway. If you're not, to really think about making your procedure more consistent, because I think that leads into something that you had talked about with Aaron. We talked about before, Mario, was interviewing, and yes. You talk about scoring applicants, which we don't score them. We do more of like an ABC, but I'm curious about like the scoring and getting data from them, because that can help if there are some people that you're I call them fencers. Like, it could go either way. What kind of year is this where I have to hire a lot of people and I'm going to roll the dice? Not roll the dice, don't get me wrong, but like you're kind of a B for me versus an A. So I am curious to know like some of those little details about scoring and like corporate lessons about scoring and getting data during interviews.
Yeah. That leads to one of my other like favorite phrases, which is capture data to capture value. And so if you are able to record down the things that you are thinking about an applicant as they apply, then able to leverage that information either during training or in the build up to camp, there might need some extra support. Capturing that data can be super helpful. And what does that data capture look like? I find it best when you have a scorecard in a structured interview that you're evaluating camp applicants on. And so I can talk a little bit about this staffing pilot, this staffing redesign that I helped camp group with over the last couple of years. And across there, something like 18 plus camps, we got together and decided what are the 7 core competencies that we care the most about when we are hiring staff. Things from grit to warmth to EQ to experience working with children. We decided these 7 competencies are what we care most about. And then we defined what does a response, well, what are the questions that we can ask that would help interviewers understand what they think this applicant scores on a scale of 0 to 10 on each of these 7 dimensions. And so we came up with this consistent question bank that all candidates are asked. And then lastly, came up with a rubric on what does a score number 1 look like versus a score 3 versus a score 7 versus a score 10, right? And so we had this common language and then use this to evaluate what interviewers believed a candidate like presented in their interview, like how strong they showed up on emotional intelligence or leadership or being a team player. And we scored that as well as an overall grade. And so coming into orientation, we were able to say like, oh, Ashley has a bunch of prior kid experience, but we thought that maybe she was scoring lower on cultural fit. Let's make sure that we buddy her up with Kendra, this returning counselor, who's going to be a really great mentor. And so because we were capturing and cataloging that data in the interview process, we were able to change our actions in training to really support more of these counselors, sorry. And the last like important thing here is we then at the end of the summer and compared that to those interview scores. And so we could then see which of the 7 core competencies was the largest determinant of success for counselors. And that was a really cool exercise and a great example of you spend 3 minutes after an interview in a little Google form saying like, I thought they were a 7 on childcare, a 5 on emotional intelligence. And I could get you a lot of data to help your camp. Yeah. So hopefully that long answer was super helpful, Kelly.
Oh, all I want to know is, ooh, no, you have got my wheels turning, Mario. I mean, I feel like we have really great questions. So I think we do I'm seeing for us, I think we do a really great job, like welcoming people, showing our culture, talking about it. I think we have good questions. But what I really like is really one, looking at those core competencies, but I do like that scoring because it does like maybe for some of our much like I'll get some shy or quieter applicants, but it does help me to be like, but they were a 7 on the experience with children or leadership or whatever that is, EQ. So I really like that because I think that will help me narrow down some of those. And I love the end. I love the looking back to see how you scored them initially and thought they were going to do, and then how they did and what was that measure of success. I love that.
And I think I could share an insight from this that could be quite helpful. We looked at the subsegment of folks that didn't make it through the summer, either quitting or getting terminated and fired. And we saw that with statistical validity, they were scoring lower on cultural fit than other applicants. And so the hiring managers at these camps had an inkling that these folks might not be the best match or might not make it through the summer. And so once we had that piece of knowledge, it became like, all right, with the director team, what steps are we going to take with these like lower cultural fit scores to ensure that they succeed and thrive at camp? Because you totally need diversity. The answer is not to have a homogenous looking group, but with that extra knowledge, you can put in some deliberate actions to have a great system. So I wanted to share that one.
What did they ask? And then Howie, I want to give you a chance. What did they ask though to determine cultural fit? Was that a vibe, or did they feel like there was a question? Like I'm curious about that, of how they determined in an interview a good cultural fit or not.
Yeah, so the 17 different camps, I think we had, a representative from almost every camp, so like 10 people in the committee. And we decided, like, here's the question bank of 3 to 7 questions that you can ask about this competency. And then it really became like what is that interviewer's perception of that competency? And it's not going to be perfect because it's how they show up in an interview and there's a bunch of subjectivity. But if you couched it in this interviewer's opinion, and then we tried to get 2 interviews whenever possible, and then you could kind of balance the scores between them. That was the kind of solve. Because you're right, you're never going to be able to get it more than like a vibe check. But if everyone's agreed that like these are the questions that we like for this competency, then you can at least trust your system. You made a choice, and now you keep rocking with that SOP.
Every year, it's the same thing. Lots of hours spent working on the daily schedules only for there to be mistakes, missed activities, and lots of stress. Why is it so difficult? There's got to be a better way. And there is Camptivities, an activity scheduler made specifically for camps. Group scheduling or camper scheduling, we've got you covered. Different day schedules, no problem. Auto scheduling, elective scheduling, batch scheduling, schedule the way that works for your camp. With over 60 reports, you'll be able to see the data easily. Now's the time to implement a better way to schedule. Go to camptivities.com and set up a time to chat. Make activity scheduling easier, less stressful, and more efficient. We'd love to show you the next big thing in camp, so don't wait. Start the onboarding process now when you have the time. Let us help you get away from your desk and back out in camp. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat.
Do you love your camp management software? This is what Sarah from Tom Sawyer Camp says about her solution. We love everything about Camp Brain. The software has helped us improve all of our systems when it comes to running our camp programs. From online registration to communicating with our families to billing and running payments, the list goes on and on. We are customers for life. Celebrating 30 years dedicated to complete camp management, Camp Brain not only provides a great tool and caring support for your best ever work days, but a delightful registration experience for parents. They're continually refining their solution to deliver exactly what camp owners need now and will next. From SMS texting to integrated payment solutions and more. Discover what more than 1,800 camps know and how you can love your software too. Visit campbrain.com/ownerspot. And I definitely think that in operations where there are multiple hiring managers doing multiple interviews with a cross-section of applicants, that consistency or that predictability of a plan of that we're all seeing it from the same lens, or we're applying, as you said, a system that we can have some really great conversations. I mean, you do interviewing long enough, you kind of can have a crystal ball. I think that's part of the art and science of the interview process that a lot of us apply if we've done it for a long time. But at the same time, creating objective measures. So because we are turning away people and they don't go through the process. And I think that being able to give feedback why an applicant didn't get the job. I think as operators, Mario, I'd be curious to get your thought about the camps that you've been talking to. Like, if an applicant wasn't successful, are you finding that the camps you've been kind of working with, are they giving feedback to people? I find that young people are asking for more feedback than ever if they didn't get a position. And I'm just curious if maybe we could just talk a little bit about that. What are you finding? Are camps doing that?
I wish I had a clear answer. I haven't really
Yeah.
observed anything on that front. What I do know is that people as a whole are demanding more real and in the moment feedback. And I think
For
that has
sure.
trickled down to our younger generation. The really important thing that I found, especially with working with the staff at Mountain Camp Marin, is making sure any feedback is about actions and not
Yep.
someone's person. And that line can be hard to find, but it's super important to kind of focus on. So sorry I don't have a better answer there, but that's how I'm seeing it playing out.
Yeah, I just think we're finding more people wanting that feedback more than ever now. And
Totally.
also an operation like mine, which we hire a larger number of staff than some, we're getting like first time, never had a job interview before in their lives. And there has to be some application to the rubric, to the understanding that they've never done this before too. And it kind of calls for our, as I said before, this visioning of cultural fit or EQ or communication skills or whatever it is that you're looking at. It's nice to have something that at least you can rely on as an objective measure to some degree. But it's a great topic. And once again, an SOP that we can all consider. Kelly, we're going to say that a lot in this show.
Yes, I was trying to think of a witty, like another
Yeah.
abbreviation to YES. Howie, we are.
Yes.
Howie, on the feedback component, I wanted to share something interesting that DocuSign does. And they
Please.
send out a applicant experience survey to everyone that goes through their interview process, whether they're hired or not. And so they get feedback on both like kind of their brand perception, as well as like how personable and welcoming their interviewers are. Are they setting the right tone? And so getting feedback from the applicants is something I'm trying to do at Mountain Camp Marin too, especially someone who goes through my interview process and then decides to take a job elsewhere. I'm always saying like, oh, I hope you the best on your other plans. I'd love to hear like what about our program could have been different to retain you or to get you to come here. So the feedback can go both ways and should be sought out both ways.
I love that. I love that. And then they'll write back, you don't pay me enough, so I'm not going. But whatever, that's it. Which is always a great topic of discussion for the industry, for sure.
I wanted to ask Howie,
go ahead.
or I
Yes,
thought
please.
maybe naturally this would move to, I'm about that application process. One of the things we wanted to ask, and you've talked about, is making that application more approachable and relevant.
Yeah.
I know that that's been on the staffing summit. They talked about that, and we've really reduced the questions on our application because we found we're going to want to ask these in person anyway. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are about applications and how camps can be adaptable with that.
Yeah. The most important thing that I think about the application process is how do you reduce the time between interest by the applicant and offer by the camp, or I guess non-offer too, right? And so how do you remove any friction in that process or points within the funnel between at the top of the funnel, you have everyone in the world and then people that are interested, and at the bottom, we have the folks that actually work at your camp. There's a lot of places where in the camp hiring process, folks can leak out of that funnel. How do you condense the size of the funnel or apply duct tape in the different leaky holes so you have a better through line there? And one of the ways that I've done that at Mountain Camp Marin is reducing the time between interest and offer. So when someone is interested in my camp, there is a 2-minute like interest form online. We're talking just name, email, do you have previous camp experience? I mean, it might be just that, right? Very, very short. And then after they send that, I have on like a 1-hour delay, send them an email back, inviting them to take a Spark Hire interview. This is one of the things in the application process that I stand by the most. I really enjoy this. It is a one-way interview where I've pre-recorded 5 questions to the applicant. They get to watch me giving them the question. They get to think about it for as long as they want. Then they video record themselves answering the question, and they can do as many tries as they would like, right? But I want to see how they are responding to different like questions that we would ask in a general interview, but do it in an asynchronous manner so that it kind of like lower nerves. We're still going to do our full interview later on, but it's a little bit lower stakes. They have the opportunity to do this interview whenever they like because they do it on their computer. And then on my side, as I'm reviewing them, I can watch answers 1 and 2 and be like, Thomas is gold. I am so excited to interview him. I don't need to do the rest of this, read through the rest of them. And so it kind of cuts out that phone screen by doing this asynchronous Spark Hire. And the last thing that I really love about it is a great filter because a lot of folks won't put in the effort to do the one-way interview, right? They filled out the interest form. We made that bar as low as possible. And now I have a pretty high bar, right? You have to spend about 10 to 15 minutes talking to a screen by yourself in your room, kind of intimidating. If someone doesn't want to go through that process, it's awesome to like not have them at my camp because they're probably not going to want to be up in front of the stage singing songs to the Blazers in their division or whatever have you. So I really love this like Spark Hire as a filtering process. And then lastly, we end with an interview on Zoom and get to ask them some of those questions to unearth those core competencies. But that's kind of how I think about the application process. And I try to do it as quick as possible. If they fill out the Spark Hire the same day that they've done the application, I'm then giving them my Calendly link and they can schedule time to interview tomorrow, right? Like I've had someone go from submitting application to getting their job offer in 36 hours. And I think that is kind of best practice in today's world.
Does the Spark, maybe you can just dig into Spark Hire. Is that an
Absolutely.
acronym? Is that an acronym? Is that a...
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a tech tool. It is a
It's a tech tool.
software. Yeah.
Gotcha.
The Mountain Camp family of camps is a paying user of it. We use it for all 4 of our camp programs. Some of them for our like counselor and training. I use it for all of my staff. And it's a tech tool that allows the applicant to record themselves responding to the videos.
So maybe Mario, we can get a link to opportunities for listeners to maybe access and maybe this is something they would want to jump into. So yeah, a layer of filtering to say, hey, on your own time, answer these questions, impress us, and we'll see where it goes. So obviously the eagerness of someone to engage in that next step of getting through the gate, so to speak, is really fascinating. And are you finding, do you know the relationship between the quick form that they fill out and the Spark? Are you getting a lot of people following up on that? Like, give us some, you're a data guy, so I'm sure that you have a number to tell us about the relationship between the Spark Hire link and the actual submission of the Spark Hire exercise.
1 in 4. 1 in 4 people that fill out the 2-minute application actually film a video. And then my hire rate versus those people that actually filled out that video is quite high. I'm hiring, I want to say 80%, maybe 75% of people. And that's because 1, we've already filtered out for effort. And then also I cannot extend an interview if the answers on their Spark Hire don't match what our camp is all about. And so it's actually like a huge time saver. I'm not going through as many interviews that don't lead to offers. My offer is much higher.
Right, exactly. I really like hearing all about that. I'm also curious about the interested staff person comes to your website and learns about the process. Do you tell them about this step in the hiring process? So it's not a surprise that they're getting, oh my gosh, they're asking me to do a video. You've explained that this process includes this component. I just wanted to, for anyone listening, they may be curious, like, is that like just thrown on them, or how do you explain what the journey they're about to take before getting a job offer? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
On my like staff partition part of my website, we say there's the short interest form and then a one-way interview and then an interview with the director, which is me. And then after they fill out the interest form, they get the automatic email, and on the literal page that says like form submitted, it says your next step is to fill out this one-way interview. Click this link to trigger it. So it is not a surprise, or at least I would hope it is not. I'm sure for some folks it is a surprise, and then they see it and then it's a deterrent and they don't want to do it. And we kind of have enough interest at the counselor levels that it's fine to do that. If we had less people applying for spots versus how many spots we had available, maybe the Spark Hire route is not the right one, because you might be filtering out some people who could be great fits for your camp. But for our camp, it's a great mechanism.
Yeah.
A couple questions real quick that I'm sure people listening are thinking or wondering about. Number 1, when do you grab references from them? And then 2, do they end up filling out a complete application for you, or where do those 2 things come in?
Yeah. So they fill out interest form, and then I say, hey, fill out this Spark Hire. They do that. I reach out with link, find time on my calendar, and let's have a one-on-one interview. We do that. I then decide whether I'd like to hire them or not. And I send them an email that says, we'd love to have you join our team, contingent on background checks, reference checks, and summer availability. And so then I have them put in writing which dates they're available. That's really important at all camps. And then they say, yes, I accept. And in that email, I also send them the link to the more full application. That's when they're giving me their social security number, their address. That's when they're putting in the references, who I'll later email and call. But that The full application is after the point when they've given me a written yes or no. So they're not filling out that and then like maybe not going to get the job or maybe not going to want it. They've decided they're bought in, and then they'll give me all that information.
Yeah, yeah. So much food for thought, Mario. Thank you for that. I'm glad we dug into that. Where
Can I add one more thing on that one?
Sure, sure.
As it relates to reference checks, I would recommend doing something different with your more seasonal leadership or your leadership team. I would contact references if it's allowed in your state before giving them an offer if it is for your more senior positions, because your references should influence your hiring decision. For your 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, I think it's okay to give a verbal offer first and then check references.
Yeah, and that's something I know for us, a job offer is contingent on the submission of a reference that gives us an idea of, and we've got a good core group of our summer staff that are high school aged. So teachers, I mean, that really just goes a long way in knowing how other people feel about them before they get an official offer. But I think what's so wonderful about this last few minutes is that we can all maybe listening envision how we can take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and tweak what our systems are, what our SOP is, and how we want to do that. Again, no one's taking a drink every time we say SOP, but the listeners might. But the point is that it's a really in-depth approach. This approach to the Spark technology or the Spark platform, a feature of your work in the corporate world? Do you see that, or because I want to get back to a little. We've dug into this topic specifically, but I want to go back to some other elements of the corporate world of which you were very much a part of that you feel are applicable. Maybe we can just jump into more of that as well.
Absolutely. It wasn't called Spark Hire. There was another name for it, because I think there's a lot of providers that do a similar like one-way interview.
Sure.
But I know in my business school application process, I submitted my application and then I had 24 hours to like go into a portal, and there was a pre-recorded question, and I had 1 minute I had 30 seconds to prep, and then I had to answer that question. No extra tries, like one go. And so the reasons why they did that are manifold, and we don't need to talk about that. But this idea of one-way videos as part of a application process has existed for a while, and corporations use it often.
Uh-huh. So some other stuff, some other gems from the corporate world that when you've been talking to people in the camp world and sort of illuminating about some things that reinforce what we do or some things that we may want to consider, what comes to mind? Is there a couple more that we could jump into?
Yeah, one I'd love to talk about is leveraging A+ onboarding, the onboarding and training processes from the corporate world, and how it could or would show up in our camps. And there's a company that I like to reference called Alpine Investors. They're a private equity and investments company. And the way that they treat their onboarding of an employee is super intentional. And they almost turn onboarding into deplaning when necessary, because they know that like having an A player on the team is so important. And so if they can identify a misfit early on and allow them to move on to the next thing and find a replacement into that role, it's so much like stronger for their company. So they have a very institutionalized way that they do that. Alpine conducts a 30-day and 100-day internal review where the hiring members, anyone that like kind of had a hand in hiring this individual, gets in a room and discusses, are they on track for where we would wanted them to be 30 days in? And yeah, I guess going back a bit, they had decided and discussed with their candidate, like 30 days from now, where would we like to be in terms of, have they led the initiatives they wanted to lead? Have they seen the sales conversions? Whatever those numbers are or those goals are, they decided what those are. And then at the 30-day mark, the hiring team without the current employee assesses, are they on track or are they not? And then they do the same thing at the 100-day mark. And if they're not on track at either of those points, and there's not a clear path to them becoming an A player on the team, then they're kindly let go. And that's something that the applicant is like knows ahead of time. And so how this could or would show up at camps, it is not to have a 30 and 100-day internal review. It's instead understanding that like a poor performer on your team or someone who can be detrimental to your camp culture is way better to be shown the door during training than let them get into week 3, week 4 when there's a lull in energy and then they're, stirring up discontent. And so the lesson I think here is being okay with letting folks go early and perhaps over hiring to enable you the flexibility to do so. So that was one thing I really wanted to share.
Amazing.
I like that. I think that that's a hard and brave skill, but an important skill to have. And we haven't way overhired in the past, but it's something that's on my mind because I feel like every year, at least someone, who knows, right? Broken ankle, appendicitis, whatever that is. But I like that. Let them go early, Howie.
Yeah. And it doesn't need to be as far as letting go. It could be your leadership team having a discussion on day 2 of training of like who seems to be struggling or who isn't fitting in as well as we'd like them to, and then taking actionable steps to give them extra support. Right, letting someone go is the last desired outcome. But if you come in with a plan of how are we going to take a step back and identify how things are going, and then have our seasonal leadership team feel empowered to change the environment for these individuals, especially if you're even like referencing those notes you made during the interview, capture data to capture value, then I think that can really take your camp to the next level.
Yes, absolutely. And I also think that a lot of things that I'm thinking about, Mario, as you're talking through that is even early on in staff training, the profile of a returning staff member versus a new staff member and the expectations applied to them, how we all have, as we operate camps, know some of the attitudes that returning people come in with their buy-in on training, or I've heard this before, or whatever. You can almost segment the approach to this based on new and returning as well, because there's an element of recognizing that staff training is something that we all go through, but it's almost like vibe and contribution, and we use at our camp this concept of what is your camp profile? Like, how do you carry yourself? And the way that you carry yourself is impacting new and returning people in a certain way. And we've tried to, and I think we're getting better at going after those things earlier. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because it really allows people to know where they stand, because sometimes we just hope that things will turn around. But if we have a process that allows us to identify it and putting really capable people to frame it in a really good way, so they know they're on a path that they can self-correct and they probably need support, we're not jumping to the end decision, but we got to get on this early. So I love a lot of that. And it does call for us as camp directors and operators to think about, do we have the people who can deliver those processes to Mario? Like, because we put a lot on our seasonal staff, like it's important to also reflect on, as we try to implement some of these things, maybe you can speak to sort of what kind of environment you have to create to take on some of these things, because there's a lot of things that we may dream of that we want to put in, but it may take away from other things that may fall to the wayside if we're focused on certain new implementations, so to speak. Maybe you can give a thought on that as well.
Yeah, that's the magic question. Like, how do you create a culture of success and have people feel empowered to execute on a joint mission? It's so hard. The thing that comes to mind, and I'm forgetting which book that I read this in, but there was some big study, and it said that one of the largest common characteristics between high-performing teams is a culture where there was no fear of providing feedback. There was an encouragement of providing feedback in the moment and actions-based, and there was no fear of any type of retribution or change of opinion towards the feedback giver. And so if you can create that space, you celebrate and loudly applaud someone who is making suggestions to make camp better, especially if they're more senior leaders, I think that is a possible large unlock. One way that at a more micro level that we do this at our camp is taking an idea from the Day Camp podcast. We have a better board. We have a big piece of butcher paper on the back of the door in the office, and it says, how can our camp be better? And we've got some Sharpies taped right there. And every member of the staff should feel and does feel empowered to like write on the board what can be done better at camp both this year and in the future. And every one of my seasonal leadership team members like loudly applauds anyone that goes up and writes on it. Thank you, Theo, for writing on the board. You're helping camp get better. And like, it is a cool thing to do. And I will, in my morning meetings, look at the better board beforehand and be like, I saw this great idea. We're going to institute it now. Or I want to address this idea. There's elements that we're going to keep and we're not going to do those. And so having that culture of everyone is celebrated for providing feedback, that could be part of the unlock.
Really good.
Mhm.
Kelly,
I love that.
Kelly, you know that I know you're a big book fan, and Mario is a big book fan.
True.
And I know that as part of this conversation, we wanted to have Mario sort of share some gems he's taken away from some of his readings that relate to the corporate world into camp. And maybe I know you have a couple thoughts on that, or perhaps maybe we can get Mario to pick a couple of things that are on his mind and throw them our way. Maybe we should just do that. Awesome.
Sweet. So this is part of a presentation that I've given at Wake, at ACA National, at CODA, and I will give again at Tri-State. And it is the SparkNotes version of 5 business books and what camp professionals can learn from them. And one, maybe a good one to talk about to start, is from the retail industry, Sam Walton's autobiography titled Made in America. And the central lesson coming out of this book is how Walmart uses resources efficiently, how they've grown into a $600 billion business, and how some of their core tenets have applications in the camp space. And so an example to talk about is how Walmart captures and acts upon stakeholder input. So Sam Walton used to walk around stores with a tape recorder and just interviewing folks, writing down, speaking his ideas as he walked around. He would do this both to his own stores and to competitor stores. Every family vacation the Walton family took included both internal and competitive store visits. And he'd just be walking around with this tape recorder, bringing in ideas, interviewing folks in the moment. He even had his tape recorder confiscated at Costco one time, which is like a funny other story. But I was thinking about this, like if you have the opinions of customers so top of mind, you're able to, and you have the systems in place to adapt to their input, that's going to put you ahead of the field. And so I thought, at camp, how does this show up? And there's 3 core stakeholders that the camps care about most: campers, parents, and staff. And so I thought, all right, how can we get more input from these 3 stakeholders? So starting with staff, the idea I share is the better board. So I just spoke about that, and we can knock that one off. And I'll tell you about 2 other ideas from campers and parents. For campers, I have part of our culture at Mountain Camp Marin is we are expert after action reviewers. After action review, that is after every activity or episode or moment, we ask 2 questions. What went well? And what could be done better? Or like, what could we do differently next time? And so we'll be playing a game of medic dodgeball. We end the game 3 minutes early. Your 16-year-old counselor, Declan, brings people together and like, all right, what do we love about this game? I like that we won. Okay, that's cool. But like, what else did we like? I like that everyone got to play. That's great. All right. And what can we do different next time? And you'll have little Luke raise his hand and like, I didn't get a chance to be the medic. If we were to play with more medics next time, that'd be great. And then when you play dodgeball next time, you say, hey, Luke, we're going to have 4 medics on each side to start this game. And then campers feel like their input is shaping your programming. That is such a powerful thing. So after action reviews, what went well and what could be done better? Apply that in your camp programming, in your training, anywhere possible. So that is for the camper side. And then on the parent side, this is a great idea that I took from Adam Wallach at Mohawk Day Camp. And they have what's called a happy camper survey. I know almost every camp has an end of summer survey where they collect information from parents. Maybe they get net promoter score and all that fancy stuff. But Adam does something really cool. It's in the midpoint of that camper's time at camp. They send a 2-question survey to parents. Are you a happy camper? It's either yes or no. And then an open box, what would you like to share with us? And that is an awesome way to get a pulse check in season of what are people enjoying. And maybe only 5% of folks are not happy campers. But then you could follow up directly with that family and understand what are the challenges and work to address them. And so collecting feedback when you still have the opportunity to act upon it that summer is a tremendous unlock for camps. And so that's my recommendation there. So yeah, stakeholder input, campers, parents, and staff.
I was just talking with Audrey Monkey at ACA, and we were talking about just evaluations and surveys, and we are just new to doing camper surveys. We've been doing great with parents, great with staff, but we haven't been doing great with campers. So we did that last year, end of session. But what she had said was just like that, was like mid-session. So when you can still do something for that kid, to ask them mid-session. And I love that. And I like that. I love that for parents. So easy. 2 questions. Are you happy or are you not? That's good. I like it, Mario. Awesome. Okay. Wow. But Sam Walton is smart person.
Yeah.
All right. The next one I want to talk about was the make your bed. You had talked about abundant recognition. Is this abundant recognition of staff? Like, tell us what's the clip note from that one?
Yeah. So make your bed. This comes from Admiral McRaven's commencement speech at UT Austin. I know very many people have seen this video. It turned into a multi-million-dollar book deal. And it's like 9 lessons in leadership from the military. That's like the subtitle or something like that. But one of the things that I thought really stood out for camps is how the military approaches recognition. Right? If you think about the military, there are so many different merits and badges and honors and awards, and they are consistently recognizing in a very visible manner that these participants wear on their chest the different accolades that they get. And so that is really positive reinforcement to always go on to do the next great thing. And there's a nuance there that I think doesn't get talked about enough, is that there isn't this like great distinction between the quality of the different awards, right? An Army Ranger is just as distinguished as a Navy SEAL, who is just as distinguished as a Marine, at least in my opinion. Apologies to the armed services out there that have different opinions. But there's many different mechanisms in which you can succeed in the Army, and different designations of winning. And I think our camps have a tremendous opportunity to provide that for children today as well. If we think about in the traditional schooling system, there's really only 2 types of kids that receive attention. It's the smartest in the classroom and the fastest on the playground. But that doesn't need to be the case at our camps. Right? You can have someone that's celebrated for holding their breath the longest under the pool, or for coming up with the wackiest song for your assemblies, right? And the more that your camp creates opportunities for recognition for your campers and your staff, I think the better culture and a better camp that you have. And so that could be as simple as, for your 5-year-old campers, having them come up to the front and hands high in the sky, 1, 2, 3, take a bow, like any type of like public recognition, or doing your Counselor of the Week awards, do it in front of all of camp, so that those campers can get energetic when Simon won Counselor of the Week. And so I guess my push coming from Make Your Bed is find ways that you can loudly appreciate campers and staff, manufacture these winning moments for folks, and let them celebrate it.
This topic really resonates with me, Mario, because I think that we've dug in our day camp about the role middle management, unit directors and unit heads and division heads have in tailoring local recognition. We've kind of looked at camp recognition programs as more, there's camp-wide recognition, there's global recognition, and then there's local recognition, and empowering our seasoned unit heads, the seasonal staff who are often teachers who come back every summer. They know their age group best. They know the staff they work with, and giving them the latitude to get creative, give them a budget. Let them get creative, with the things they want to do to recognize camper achievement, staff achievement. And I think that the thing that we've learned is where we can apply, I think, as you said, like specific kind of accomplishments, that it's not just a blanket statement for something, but it's for something maybe related to a character value. Maybe it's related to a step they took to make the life of another camper better, and we get to celebrate that. And we know as camp people and youth development professionals, it just takes a few of those, and it kind of it's contagious. Everyone wants to do good, and a little taste of recognition just goes such a long way in the spirits of campers, and as we know, staff. So I really like this, and I think that for me personally, it's been something I've wanted to dig into. I know that in being in lots of conversations with camp pros, this topic of recognition, I mean, it could be a great debate topic if you chose one side to take. How far should recognition go versus how you should limit it. It's an age-old question, but I think the way you framed it, and in light of this resource that you talked about, and Make Your Bed, I think there's real value in, and if we're not digging into it, we probably should. I know we found the benefits of that, but I'm glad you shared those. Now, Kelly, I have to just say, has Mario been like the most enthusiastic provider of camp examples in a long time for us? I mean, he's not
my
only
youth.
saying no, okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching this, he is not only saying, like, he's doing the actions, and I love that about him. And this is camp energy.
I think we should give Mario the first ever most enthusiastic guest award. So Mario, congratulations. Please come to the front of your podcast window for this award. No,
with all sincerity,
really.
He is, I love this, and I appreciate your eagerness to share this. It's
contagious. But I think what you're talking about, what I like that Mario said is that at school, it is about like the fastest and the smartest. And yes, Howie, there is a little bit of that, like every kid gets a medal. But what's different about it to me is that it isn't just like everybody in the 6th grade program, you did so great today, come get a medal. It is like character driven or unique. Like, and I love when our counselors come up with it on their own. Like our 6th grade team, they felt like they needed a way to recognize the kids, like, right, the non-squeaky wheels, like the kids that were doing those core, like you said, Mario, a little bit like core competencies trickle down, like who is showing great character, who is being a leader, who has had emotional intelligence. So like our 6th grade program, they have the Spoon of Glory. It's a plastic spoon with ribbon, and they knight a Spoon of Glory camper every week, or a couple of them. But I love that idea. And like you said, Howie, tying that in of giving that middle management, or the people that are more in it sometimes than we are, that like autonomy and initiative to do things like that because they see it. So
love that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh,
Mario, yes, what do you have?
I want to add something on that, which is an investment that I think almost any camp should make. It's a button maker. So we have these badges at our camp, 2.5-inch circular buttons, and campers can earn these badges at their different activities, whether that's arts and crafts. There's a 1-star, a 2-star, and a 3-star arts and crafts badge. And if you come for longer periods of times, you can do more of the activities to get to that badge. And the kids love collecting these badges like Pokemon. They put them on their little pennant that we give to every camper each week, and it is a really large hit. And the last thing about these like core competencies is we have our camp values. And at the closing campfire, our counselors give out these badges for sportsmanship and togetherness to individuals in their group that they thought really exemplified these values. And I go to one of my top performing counselors, and I'm like, John, you've been crushing it this week. I love the way that you handled the behavior shaping at lunch last Thursday. I want you to give out one of our values badges at Campfire. Here's the 5 that we have to give. Which of your campers do you think deserves one of these 5s? And then John will take the one that he wants to give, and then he presents it to little camper Shirley at the campfire. So these badges are an awesome way to have abundant recognition at your camp.
Kelly, I'm smiling as Mario says that, because someone I know very well, when Sari Grossinger loves a good button maker, and she's been bugging us to use it more. And I know now that she's going to say, Howie, you spoke to Mario, and he's a big fan of the button makers too. So we need to use it even more. So I'm smiling because I know it's going to come back. I think we're using the button maker more this summer. I have a feeling.
Yes, you are, Sari. Yes, please. We have that level passing too, Mario. And I've been thinking about ways we give little beads. So I like the button idea. I've also, if anyone listening has a way to like, I want engravable like wooden beads on the name tag. So when they pass like the 4th or 5th level of archery, I want a sweet little like wooden bead or something that has like archery on it. So I'm using this podcast for my own personal game, but if anyone has something like that by game, please email me. But if not, the button maker is a great idea. I love that. All right, last book. Even though we're getting long on time, it's okay. I hope you're enjoying it. If not, you guys can pause this and come back, our listeners. So last one, Lords of Strategy. I'm really curious about this. Tell us about the 2 big takeaways you had from that.
Yeah. So Lords of Strategy is a book about the genesis of the strategy consulting industry, also known as management consulting. This is where I spent my time before becoming a camp professional. And the book details the history of the 3 major players in this space: McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, and Bain. And I really use this as an opportunity to kind of just share some of my favorite lessons from this industry and how I've taken them as a camp pro. The book is a great read from like a history perspective, but like these lessons are less in the book. If there's any of the books that you don't need to read and instead just listen to me do the Spark Notes, it's probably this one. But I also think it's some of the most important lessons I talk about in my presentation. And so the one that I really want to focus on would be the 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle. This is the concept that 80% of results come from 20% of inputs. So in business, often 80% of revenue comes from 20% of customers. 80% of productivity comes from 20% of your activities. 80% of issues come from 20% of causes. And this kind of ratio exists often. And it is the mandate of consultants to help companies determine what are the problems facing us that if we solve them, we are going to get 80% of the value. What problems facing us have the ability to disproportionately impact the trajectory of our company, right? And it's also the way that consultants decide on where they're going to place their time, right? We're going to create the outreach materials. We're going to identify who's the right target audience. And then y'all can decide when you're going to contact them, who contacts them, how to follow it up. Like we're going to do the most meaty parts to get you 80% of the value and then leave the rest to you. And so in camp, like there's a couple areas where I see the 80-20 rule come into effect. The first is like program focus. If you're seeing that like 80% of your satisfaction from campers is coming from 20% of activities, like let's say they love archery, outdoor cooking, and sports, well then like the name of the game should be getting as many kids as possible into those activities that are driving the most satisfaction. Maybe you have multiple periods of those activities. Find the program that's delivering the most value and focus on that. Maybe it's camper retention, right? 80% of your referrals are coming from 20% of your families. Make those 20% of families feel fantastic. Give them extra swag. Give them discounts on coming to camp for each person they refer. Like there's going to be a couple super connectors in that 20% that give you 80% of the value. Focus on those folks. And then lastly, like operational efficiency. 80% of our complaints from staff last year had to do with our break schedule. And so we like changed our processes. We changed our schedule. We changed where the break room was and addressed 80% of the problems by addressing one cause. So there's a lot of power in the 80-20 principle. And to give one extra like layer here, I think of the 80-20 principle as a cheat code to solve more problems. If instead of doing 100% of one problem and getting 100%, solving 100% of a problem to get 100% of the value, if I instead go 5 problems and do 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, that stacks up to 100, and I'm getting 80% of each of those outcomes, that expands my reach and my influence. If I can like not let perfect be the enemy of good and just find the right 20% solve to a problem, this allows me to beat down my perfectionist tendencies and instead get more done. So I love thinking of the 80-20 principle as a time management strategy as well.
Mario, do you have perfectionist tendencies?
I unfortunately do, as I think most camp directors and camp owners do. And
You
the
got
amount
that
that
right.
we can beat it down, the better.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a healthy reflection for us to look at that, to combat, which is a natural approach that we all take. I'm really glad you explained it in the way that You did. Thank you. What
And
else?
I think it's a great lesson to teach to your seasonal staff. Right? When they
Absolutely.
come to you with a problem, you ask them, what do you think the 20% solve is here? And that allows them to think about what's the crux of the issue. And then maybe they're fully empowered and have the skills to go do it themselves. So this 80-20 rule, if you can have that be a culture of dialogue with your seasonal leaders, such a huge win.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, last one. Answer first communication.
Okay, and I'm going to breeze through this one because I know coming up on time. But this is the idea that you give the most important answer or important question at the beginning and then give the context afterwards. When we do that and we give the most important thing first, we reduce the cognitive load on those that are listening to us. They're not subconsciously guessing what is the aha or what are they going to ask me, and they can instead listen to that context with a different appreciation when they know where things are coming. So there's a difference between a seasonal leader coming to you and say, Mario, I have something to talk to you about. I was over by dodgeball and it seemed like Sophia was really into the game. She dove after a ball, hit Eddie Russo. He fell over, scraped his knee. I had to give him a Band-Aid, but what do you think I should do? I didn't know what my seasonal leader wants from me there, right? Should I be calling Eddie Russo's mom? Do I need to put more people at dodgeball? Do I need to talk to Sophia about how seriously she's taking the game? If you instead go, seasonal leader comes with, and she says, answer first. We need more folks at dodgeball. There wasn't enough counselors there, and it led to the game getting unruly. Sophia in particular, maybe you should have talked with her as well, blah, blah, blah. But if you lead with the answer first, it improves the communication in your team and will help your counselors be better professionals later on.
I like it. I like it. All right, Mario, we could talk to you forever. There's just so much. But thank you for sharing.
So much good stuff, Mario. Thank you.
Thank you
for
so
that.
much. You can find Mario in a hallway at a conference, chat him up. He has just so much to share. So thank you.
Well, you're likely not to
all
make the
that.
session you're going to if you do that.
That's true.
I'll try to be succinct. And I'd love to talk to anyone in the halls.
Well, the fact is that we could talk about a lot of things that just we can really dig into, which is evidenced by all the stuff we covered in this last little bit, which has been great.
Yep. So Mario, we're going to move on to our rapid fire questions. Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's go. Number one, what's your favorite camp meal, or as a day camp, your favorite thing to have for lunch?
Ooh. Favorite thing to have for lunch is those pre-made salad bags I'll get at Trader Joe's, put it in a bowl, stir it up, and I've got my meal in like 2 minutes. And I can eat it on the walk, checking in on the different groups.
Time is of the essence. Yes, it is. Number two, if you could lead any program area at camp, what would it be?
Basketball. I love to hoop. I play in a rec league here in New York that keeps stats and highlight films and power rankings, and I love playing some staff basketball after camp every now and again.
Oh, I love it. You do have height on your side. You know, we do, this is not rapid fire, but an idea for you. We do gauntlets sometimes after camp with staff. Okay, when we're all in a circle, like our post-staff circle up, someone randomly will throw a Gatorade in the middle, and that signifies it's a gauntlet. So what we'll do is like go to archery and we'll play, or I'm sorry, go to basketball and play Thunder. And then the winner of the Thunder game gets the Gatorade, or we'll go down to archery and whoever gets a bullseye. So you could do a gauntlet for basketball at your camp after camp. So, okay, sorry, that. Kelly, back to business. Number three, s'mores burnt or golden brown?
Burnt. Next question.
Wow. Keep going. Number four, homesick camper or peace out camper?
Definitely peace out parent, especially in a day camp. Like, I don't want them around at all. Let's have the magic happen in a parent-free zone.
What about for you though? When you were a camper at Tom Sawyer and
I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay. I probably didn't explain it well. When you were a camper, were you homesick or were you like, bye mom and dad, parents, I'm out?
I was by. I didn't even want them to walk over and like introduce me to the counselor. I wanted to do it myself. So definitely peace out.
I can just picture you with the good old firm handshake back at like 6
I could see that.
Yeah, at 6 years of age. All right, last two. As a camp pro, are you happiest on the phone in the office taking care of business or out in the action?
Out in the action. I try to be out of the office as much as possible.
I like it. That's two. All right, last one. Favorite camp song. I added this in. What is it?
Yeah. Aroosta. It's a semi-repeat song. Thumbs up, Aroosta shot, Aroosta shot. Hey, and you go through all the way through. Thumbs up, wrists together, elbows in, knees bent, buns out. And the kids love buns out. Chest up, head back. and it's a classic.
Oh, all right. I want the words. I'm doing that at my camp. Buns out. That's right up my alley. I like it.
Oh my gosh, this has been the best show. I just love everything about what we've talked about. We've talked about SOPs and data, and we are singing callback songs and with thumbs up, and I love it. And it's everything that camp should be. And it speaks to the fact that we wear so many different hats, right?
Totally.
Which is, we've talked many times, Kelly and I often say to my staff, like, I'm often the most silly person on a typical camp day. That's your challenge. Can you be more silly than me? And I'm glad to say there are some more silly people, but I want to continue to be silly. Kelly is very silly on a daily basis. I know that for a fact. Mario, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. This has been just a great discussion. If people want to get a hold of you, check in with Mario. Is it LinkedIn? Is it an email? We're going to, in a second, just have everybody just share what they're doing. But before we thank you for sharing, if you're at an upcoming conference and Mario's on the schedule, go check him out. He can jump into more of the details, and appreciate all the things that you're doing to educate us on this topic. So Mario, how do people get a hold of you?
I'm easily found on LinkedIn, Mario Del Cueto. Would love to connect with you. I have a blog called thecampconsultant.com. I've been putting less blog posts out there now that I'm in a full-time role and focused on my camp, but there are some gems in those archives. So give that a look. And if you reached out to me, mario@mountaincampmarin.com, I would easily follow up with you on email and do it quickly too.
Love it. Love it. Kelly?
My email is Kelly with a Y at hiddenpinesranch.com. What about you, Howie?
Howie at camprobinhood.ca. Shoot us an email. Kelly and I are always happy to talk camp. And if you have any suggestions for future guests on the show, please throw them our way. The resources that Mario mentioned in the show will be on our show notes, and we're going to work with producer Matt to get an exhaustive list of some good stuff that you can all take away and check out and explore if it works for you and your operation. Huge thank you to our sponsors, Camp Brain and Camptivities. Thank you for supporting this podcast the way you do. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, you can find all of our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod. You can find the resources that we mentioned in this episode and lots of good stuff, not only from our show, but all the other amazing Go Camp Pro podcasts that are out there. We really hope you enjoyed this. Mario, thank you. On behalf of Kelly, my name's Howie. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Camp Owners Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Camp Owners Podcast. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review on Apple Music or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, you can find our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod. The Camp Owners Podcast is part of the Go Camp Pro Podcast Network. Find a podcast for camp pros of every age and stage at gocamp.pro/podcast. Hey Camp Pros. We love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, if you've gotten even one good idea from a Go Camp Pro podcast, a masterclass, from the Summer Camp Pros group on Facebook, at a conference, or wherever else, we ask that you give credit where credit is due. That way, we can encourage camp pros to keep freely sharing their brilliant ideas and make the camp industry better. Thanks very much.